Hello, friends. This is Arvind Jesse this side, and we welcome you to our new YouTube channel, the Anushka Academy. And please like our videos, share them with your friends and loved ones alike, and kindly subscribe and hit the bell button so you're always notified whenever we come with a new video. I'm Arvind Jesse, and I train students for writing and reading in English, the two disciplines. Today, here, we are going to talk about idioms. And I believe a majority of you are familiar with the term and are also familiar with its usage and also with its eminence, which is only growing in multifolds nowadays. You appear for whichever exam, whichever aptitude exam you're appearing for, be it a government aptitude exam or an aptitude exam that will facilitate you land an admission in the top tier colleges. In all of them, ranging from an interview in a corporate to trying to get an admission in a college, an aptitude test is there. And in that aptitude test, there are idioms. And your abilities to understand idioms and to use them efficaciously is tested. So without a further ado, let's understand idioms. So what are idioms? Idioms are phrases which don't really possess a literal meaning. It could be anything. Here you can read it. Idioms are phrases which we use in our daily lives which may lack literal sense, but we understand what they mean. For example, kick the bucket, which does not have a literal sense, not at least at its face value, but it means dying. Hanging the boots, again, it doesn't have a literal sense, but then we understand its meaning. It means retiring from whatever work you're doing. Hot potato is another one. These idioms will help you embolden your style. They'll help you make a statement and provide you with that distinction when you're communicating or, in fact, even writing. Today, we are going to dive a bit deeper and we've come up with a series of idioms only for you. And of course, as we continue these classes, we'll introduce you to some more idioms. Let's start. It's not rocket science. Now, how often have you heard of this particular idiom? I believe multiple times by now. Now, what does that mean and what does it do? It has a simple meaning. Something that doesn't require rigorous work or something that doesn't require too much of an effort. That is rocket, that something that is not difficult. Let's understand it. It's not rocket science. And rocket science, as we all know, is extraordinarily complicated. And when you have something before you which doesn't measure up to the complications of rocket science, or in other words, isn't quite as difficult as some of the other things, then you can use this phrase. Especially when somebody around you is having difficulty in performing a particular task which is generally easy. For example, cooking. If you find somebody who is whining about cooking and who considers cooking to be an uphill task, now to that person, let's say the person's name is Mohit, and Mohit makes cooking look extremely difficult, excruciatingly difficult rather. Now, rather than telling Mohit that cooking is not difficult and it's rather easy, words, I can just tell Mohit, cooking is not a rocket science. For example, swimming. I find swimming to be an extremely uphill task, and I consider it, it's not my cup of tea. It's another phrase, cup of tea, something that doesn't come naturally to you. You can use the phrase cup of tea or it's not my forte. These two phrases are interchangeable. Coming back to the topic, it's not a rocket science. So I am not extremely fond of swimming due to a variety of factors involved. And some of my friends are extremely good at swimming because for them it's easy, and generally also swimming isn't that difficult to learn. So when I told them that I find swimming extremely difficult, they tell me all the time that, Arvind, swimming is not a rocket science. Now, since we've understood what this particular idiom, it's not rocket science, means, we've got 4 options at our disposal. Out of these 4 options, which ones seem the most convincing? Can you make a little guess? Out of these 4 options at our disposal, easy, difficult, not difficult, or impossible? Now, since I've already stated something which isn't extraordinarily difficult, which doesn't demand rigorous hard work, is called it's not rocket science. That means difficult will be eliminated at the word go. And here in the option C, the degree is only increasing, not difficult. So now, yes, it could be not difficult and it also could be easy. And D, impossible, that will be eliminated at the word go again. Because this idiom basically means a task which isn't or which doesn't demand rigorous hard work. Therefore, we are left with not difficult and easy. Now, it's not rocket science. It means, as rocket science is extremely complicated. That means something that is not extremely complicated, but by no means it means easy. Are you understanding? Something, for example, cooking, is no rocket science. So when I say it's no rocket science, I mean it's not easy. I mean it's not difficult rather, but not easy. Therefore, our answer is going to be not difficult. For example, cooking is not a rocket science. Again, I'll repeat it. When I say it's not rocket science, it means a task doesn't require rigorous hard work, or the functions of it aren't extremely complicated. And that by no means becomes easy. It means not difficult. Let's move on to our next idiom. Cutting corners. Again, my same question. How often have you heard of this phrase? Now, this isn't an extremely commonplace idiom, but I'm sure in some walk of life you must have come across it. Cutting corners basically means taking shortcuts. Taking shortcuts rather in an unethical way. For example, if you have an exam, which is this if you have an exam and you haven't prepared for it, and you have decided to make chits and put it in your pockets and appear in the exam hall. When a student does that, it means he's cutting corners. When a big entrepreneur, a big businessman who makes millions of dollars tries to evade taxes by employing a variety of money launderers, that businessman is cutting corners. When an IT giant decides to fire a caboodle of employees just to hike his profits, that means that IT giant is cutting corners. Whenever somebody takes a shortcut via unethical means to ensure or to make sure that their larger interests are in the mix, that means that particular person, group of people, or an organization is cutting corners. So, out of these four options, which one seemed the most convincing? Working with perfection? As I've said, when somebody is trying to cut corners, they are trying to take shortcuts in manners and means which are unethical, immoral, and debauched. So, could it be working with perfection? That means you can easily eliminate it. Being foolish? Not at all. How could it be being foolish? If somebody is cutting corners, is taking shortcuts via unethical means, that means they couldn't be foolish. So B also gets eliminated. Now we've got street smart. Now street smart is a word which is used for a person that has a certain set of tricks up his sleeves which he employs to ensure some benefit or to have some profits. But that does not mean he's doing it to harm society or via unethical means. In fact, anybody who is not traditionally trained in a field or is not professionally trained but has learnt a way on his own. For example, let's say a mechanic who may not be a trained engineer, but if he decides to make a vehicle on his own, uh, with the help of the tricks that he has learned in his practical life or in his practical affairs while working at a variety of garages, that means he possesses some tricks which makes him street smart. But that couldn't be held tantamount to cutting corners. So street smart also gets eliminated. Now you're only left with one option, that is trying to save time and money. When a person is cutting corners, that means they're trying to perform a task by cutting the cost and deducting the time. Therefore, we have gotten our answer, which is option D. Now, next one, bite the bullet. Now, as it's quite evident by the picture, you can see, as it's quite evident by the picture itself and the phrase itself. When you're biting, don't take it literally. It doesn't mean when you take the bullet in your mouth and bite it. What this actually means is when you're trying to do something absolutely difficult. For example, if you're appearing for an exam and the preparation for that exam is going to take long stretches of time, months, sometimes years, but then you decide to do that, that means you have bit the bullet by deciding to undergo that rigorous preparation for that particular exam. When in your school, office, colleges, wherever, you are confronted by a cadre of bullies who come at you and pick up on you, take the mick out of you almost every other time, and one day you decide to stand up against them and you look them in the eye, that means you have decided to bite the bullet and face it. When you are ready to do something which is extremely difficult, in that case, you can use this phrase or you can use this idiom. Because what these idioms and phrases do, they help you encapsulate the entire narrative in one line. You may not have to go in great detail when you employ these idioms. On top of it, they also decorate your language. They give that lush, they give that flair to your language. So the advantages are multifold. I've just explained two. There are many other examples, and as we continue to take these classes every day, we'll come up with more of them. We'll try to recall them. So at the moment, you can keep these two things in your mind. Whenever you're using an idiom, you are killing two birds by one stone. Therefore, out of these four options, which one seemed the most convincing? To get shot in the mouth? Definitely not. So you can eliminate this. To do something easy, how could it be held tantamount to doing something easy? You're biting the bullet. The phrase, it is self-explanatory. It means doing an uphill task which requires unsurpassable courage, unsurpassable chivalry. So option B also gets eliminated. To do something difficult or to hide a secret. As I've explained the meaning already, it has, by no stretch of imagination, almost nothing to do with to hide a secret. And considering and taking into account, rather, there is no correlation between the option D and the idiom. Therefore, we are only left with one option, that is to do something difficult. Bite the bullet. If you, in any walk of life, at any point in time of your life, have endeavored into doing something extremely difficult which you never thought you would ever do or put your hands to, then you can recall that experience and use this idiom. Or if you are currently undergoing a course of action which required paradigm shifts in your life, which required you to scoop unsurpassable courage within yourself, then you can use this phrase for your current situation. It could be for anything, or maybe a future plan that you have in your mind, which took you immense, which took immense sweat out of you. A decision that you're about to make, anything which required contemplation of long stretches, a decision that was really tough, a fight that you participated in, a tournament that you participated in, an exam that you gave. So anything that has been difficult in your life, or is difficult in your life, or is going to be difficult in your life, and you're ready to stand up against it, or to it, or measure up to it, then this phrase can be apposite for that situation, for that preposition. Bite the bullet. Let's go to another idiom. We also have certain examples here. The manager had been putting off the budget meeting but decided to bite the bullet and have the meeting this week. The kids decided to bite the bullet and clean their rooms so they could go to the park. Third one, the aging couple decided to bite the bullet and sell their home and move on to a retirement community. Now you look at the first sentence. The manager had been putting off the budget meeting but decided to bite the bullet. The manager putting off means delaying. In this context, the manager was delaying the budget meeting, but then one day he surmounts this courage and decides to have the meeting. That means he's biting the bullet. The kids decided to bite the bullet and clean their room so they could go to the park. For small children, cleaning the room is again a convoluted, difficult task. Therefore, because it's difficult for them, they decided to bite the bullet. The aging couple decided to bite the bullet and sell their home and move to a retirement ceremony. So for this aging couple, selling their home was an excruciating task at the disposal. And them arriving at this decision to just sell their house is or could be held tantamount to biting the bullet. Let's go to our next idiom. Now you see the phrase easy does it. What does that mean? Now, out of these four options that we have at our disposal, you might correlate it with perhaps these two or three. To be careful and slow, be wild, stop thinking, or perform easily. What could it mean? Out of these four options, here we don't quite have an easy work because these two seem convincing as well. Now, whenever somebody is showing extreme haste and is projecting elements of frantic behavior, in that scenario, you may use this phrase, easy does it. Just calm down a little bit. Take a bit of a breather. Perform an activity that could be a stress buster for you. Easy does it. For example, if your parents or your mother is becoming grumpy, is unhappy with the mess of the house, is getting washed down due to the house not being clean because the festive season has begun, then you can tell her, easy does it. It means calm down, relax, and then start performing or then put your hands at whatever you're about to do. We've seen this in the last Cricket World Cup. Our team had shown great degree of urgency in winning the few tournaments which preceded this 24 World Cup. And we never found the most coveted or the desired result. And we were disappointment. We were full of disappointment rather. Why so? Because there was a certain haste. This time, they employed the idiom, easy does it. They went in the tournament nonchalantly. They were thinking from game to game, and eventually they were able to secure a World Cup victory. How? Easy does it. No show of haste and frantic behavior. If you have an exam tomorrow and you are awfully stressed, you don't know what to do, and you are time and again thinking about it, that exam pressure, the peer pressure, combination of both is making circles in your mind, then you can tell yourself, easy does it, which basically means just calm down, just sit, just go through it. Now, out of these four options, which one seemed the most convincing? Out of the four options that we have at our disposal, which one seemed the most convincing? Be wild is absolutely wrong. Therefore, you can eliminate it at the word go. Stop thinking or perform easily. It does not mean stop thinking. It says easy does it. That means you have to be calm. But it never says stop thinking. Perform easily becomes wondrous. There are so many more idioms for that. So this one, but still, it could be part of the contention. And A also could be a part of the contention. Now let's find the answer. When lifting the heavy box, he said, easy does it. We don't want to drop it. So you see here, when lifting the heavy box, he said, easy does it. We don't want to drop it. So when you're lifting the heavy box, and if you show any haste and frantic behavior, it might drop down. And the goods which are kept in the box may break down. Therefore, the phrase easy does it. That means our first option is right. To be careful and slow. Is that right? It couldn't be performed easily. Because perform easily does not take into account the diligence. Therefore, A remains our right answer. Now let's have a look at more examples. As they navigated the narrow road, the driver reminded everyone, easy does it. When they were going through the road which was narrow and scrampy, people can get a bit cranky and show haste, and they could get into extra trouble. So the driver reminded them of what? Easy does it. That, again, I'm repeating it, means being calm and not getting plummeted under the pressure, just having or employing a nonchalant approach. Third sentence. While painting the delicate figurine, she reminded herself, easy does it. Now, painting is a job which requires extreme, meticulous attention. And one single lapse in concentration can completely ruin the painting. Therefore, this phrase will come so handy here. Easy does it. You have to be calm while painting something. So, this is how we use this phrase, easy does it. Hit the sack are another idiom. How often do you get extremely tired? You feel that fatigue, exhaustion when you perform a laborious task. It could be mental and physical both. Does it happen frequently on a regular basis? And your final resort is to just find the bed and jump in it, isn't it? If you had a rigorous, intense session in the gym, or if you had a back-breaking, laborious day at work, it could be anything. It could be a fatigue that has been piling upon from a fortnight. Could be anything. And you feel that the first thing you need to do is jump on the bed and give some rest to your body. That's when you use the phrase hit the sack. It does not mean you go and punch something or you start doing something with the sack. It means jumping on the bed when you are excruciatingly tired. My friend Rahul, after his heavy workout, does nothing but hits the sack. I called it a day by doing what? Directly hitting the sack. When you say I called it a day, that means you're about to go and sleep and the day is over. Can you think of more phrases? If you had a match, a cricket match, a boxing match, a badminton match, tennis match, and the match is over, you could also use it if you were under tumultuous mental pressure, if you had a rough day on a mental level, and you don't have too much to think about, and you just want to have a good, tight sleep. I had a mentally exhausting day. Now I'm going to hit the sack. If you had just finished your exam, an exam that put you under immense pressure, and at times you plummeted under it, but you still picked yourself together, got your marbles back, and you gave the exam. Now, what do you say to yourself? It was a tough journey that I undertook, an immensely tough journey that I undertook. Now, I'm going to go, and first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the sack. When you're awfully tired and you just want to sleep. If you give a lecture, a long lecture, or if you attended a long lecture, and you feel at the receiving end of avalanching mental fatigue, then what do you say? You say, I'm going to hit the sack. When you want to sleep, when you're out of gas, I wish to hit the sack. Now, out of these four options, which one seem the most convincing? Punch the sack. As I've already stated, it cannot be punch the sack, because that is what it means literally. Could it be jump off? No. Could it be fight? No. These three are eliminated. It is hit the bad. Now let's try and look at some sentences. I'm really tired after all that exercise. I'm going to hit the sack. After the long road trip, we were all dead, tired, and ready to hit the sack. This is one phase of your life, or one segment of your life where you could employ this particular idiom. Long road trip. If you go on a road trip, it is extremely tiring. Therefore, after the long road trip, we were all dead, tired, and ready to hit the sack. As soon as we reached home, this job is really sucking the life out of me. I haven't hit the sack in nearly 24 hours. When you have not slept at all, and just saying I haven't slept at all doesn't have that motive. If you use another advantage of using these idioms is it adds a motive to your language. It adds a layer which couldn't be transmitted into words and terms because it's pure style, it's intangible, but it gives a motive, it gives a certain invisible weightage to your sentences. So I haven't hit the sack. It just sounds better than I have not slept in a while. Just for the sound of it, not necessarily for its utility, but just for the sound of it. It sounds way, way better. As I've said, it gives a motive to your sentences. It adds weight to your sentences. So, this was hit the bad. Now let's go to our next idiom. A blessing in disguise. An apparent misfortune that eventually has good results. What does that mean? Now, we don't have options here because I wanted to go no holds barred with that. What does this mean? It's a beautiful phrase. If in one word I had to encapsulate this phrase, I would say it's a beautiful phrase. It's a thing of beauty, a blessing in disguise. A synonym for this phrase, or a phrase which has a similar feel, similar color to it, is silver lining. Now, coming back to this particular phrase, a blessing in what it means. When you are in a situation which is absolutely unfortunate, troublesome, tempestuous, difficult, and serendipity happens. What do you mean by serendipity? When you're not looking for something good, but you find something good, especially when you're not looking for it. Something in that unfortunate situation, like a bolt from the blue, pops up and which is in your favor. For that, you use this phrase, a blessing in disguise. For example, You leave, you quit your job, and then suddenly you realize that your life is ramshackle now, completely dilapidated, and you're flummoxed. You don't know what to do, puzzled to no end. You quit your job, your bills to pay, and whatnot. Now, in that unfortunate scenario, you end up meeting somebody whom you wouldn't have met because of your last job, and that somebody gets you in another company which pays you even more. So, that situation or that brief period of your life when you are bereft of a job or totally out of a job was a blessing in disguise. What does disguise means? Disguise means छिपा हुआ. A blessing in, you see this situation, this photograph, it's an unfortunate situation. So in this unfortunate situation, when you're out of your job, you've quit your job for a variety of reasons best attributable to you, and you are distraught, absolutely distraught, and you end up meeting somebody whom you wouldn't have met due to the occupancy, and that person gets you a job in another company and which it pays you more. It becomes a blessing in disguise. Can you think of a situation wherein you were in the web of misfortunes and you thought everything was over for you? As I've said, ramshackle, completely distraught. And then something good came out of it. And that good turned the events. It was that curve that you waited for all your life. That will be a blessing in disguise. For example, COVID. When COVID came to our shores, we were all perturbed by it. We lost millions of lives and whatnot. But one particular sector which is now reaping the benefits of it is the corporate sector. And why do I say so? It opened floodgates of opportunities for people who couldn't relocate to other cities for work. It gave birth to a trend which has now, at the time, I'm sure they must be distraught as everybody was. And obviously, they must have lost their loved ones as well. But the silver lining was a lion's share of people today have work from home. And we cannot, no matter, of course, they have responsibilities and duties that they need to abide by, and they still have to work, but we cannot undermine the perks, the luxuries that work from home puts forth. Therefore, COVID, for that section of society, was a blessing in disguise. What else was a blessing in disguise? Can you think of somebody when you were in situations wherein you felt that your life is completely done and you are exposed, and in that situation something happened? That is a blessing in disguise. My friend, who's a doctor, was about to appear for PG, and last month he had his exam. Unfortunately, perhaps the paper got leaked and his exam got cancelled. And he was distraught because he felt mentally done. He couldn't prepare anymore. Now his exam was postponed by a month. Next month, or he was about to have his exam. And then he discovers that there was a certain subject that he hadn't studied and he had left it ajar. And then he realized that particular paper leak or the postpone was a blessing in disguise, because now he had handsome time at his disposal to comprehensively study that subject which he, by mistake, did not study for a variety of reasons best attributable to him. That means that paper was a blessing in disguise for my friend. Have you ever had a situation like that in your life, wherein, bang in the middle of tragedies, something emerged extremely angelic, miraculous, and turned your life upside down? Just like this picture. Let's get into more sentences. Losing that job turned out to be a blessing in disguise for him, as it forced him to plunge into business. Another one. How many people have we come across? We walk neck by jowl with thousands of people. Only after losing their job, they discover an entrepreneur in themselves. And then they start devising plans for startups. And then they come up with startups, and a good number of those startups go on to become mega successful. So, them being fired from their jobs was nothing but a blessing in disguise, because it gave them the time to self-reflect. And in the process of that self-reflection, they went on to rediscover themselves, and they identified that they have a side to them which could be perfect if they become an entrepreneur or a businessman or an industrialist. They just need a startup. The lockdown in 2020 proved to be a business blessing in disguise. It gave me lots of time to spend with my family. One more thing. The contemporary times are predominantly a rat race, wherein we follow a computerized timetable day in and day out. In that process, we are bound to take for granted our personal relationships with our loved ones. And that ignorance of ours could cause a communication gap, and sometimes the communication gap leads to misunderstandings, which is a common concomitant of the contemporary times and the watertight timetables that we tend to follow. But lockdown gave us time to spend with our loved ones, and we looked at our relationships, our equations with our loved ones anew. We got opportunity to rekindle our relationships. Therefore, the lockdown in 2020 proved to be a blessing in disguise. Although we were in quarantine, we were observing the lockdown, there was frustration, but amid all of that, we had time to rediscover, rekindle our relationships with the most special people of our life. When Pet fractured his knee, it was a blessing in disguise, for he got some much needed rest and a break from his hectic work life and refocused on some essential things in his life. Now, how many of you have experienced this? When you incur an injury or meet with an accident, and now you're bedridden. On face value, a situation like that seems absolutely appalling, unfortunate, and something that we would want to avoid at all costs. But here in this case, it gave him much needed time to rest and take a break from his hectic work. So that injury also proved to be a blessing in disguise, because he got time to provide much needed rest to his body, which was overdue. Have you ever had that situation in your life wherein you incurred an injury and you felt, oh dear, what's happened to me, and now what? How will I recuperate? In how much time will I recuperate? But that process gave you the time to take rest, again to self-reflect, and just enjoy the mundane, the silence of life. Sometimes these injuries can also be blessing in disguise, because in that contemplation, in that process of self-reflection, we might arrive at certain learnings of ourselves which we ourselves were unexposed to. Therefore, even such critical times would be a blessing in disguise. You can try and use these idioms for a variety of incidents that you've been in your life or are going through or will go through in future. As I've already stated multiple times, what they do is first, they save you a lot of time, they encapsulate what you're trying to say in just one sentence, and on top of it, they make your language sound better. They make you sound a little bit more sophisticated. So you'll have that much needed distinction. And who does not need a distinction? Any person in the world would die to have a certain degree of distinction in any discipline. And I would say it is the most coveted one. One of the most coveted ones is your communication. If you have that distinction in your communication, you are highly regarded. So do try and use these idioms, and in our coming classes, we are going to unfurl a series of more of them. This is our new channel. Please subscribe it, like it, hit the bell button so that you are notified every time we upload a new video. Thank you for the time being.